Qué rico poder verlos, ver entrando la gente. Me encantaría y los invito a que vayan poniendo sus cámaras, a que abran, a que nos hagamos presentes, a que vayamos mirando quiénes estamos por acá. Betica, gracias. María José, gracias.
Amor, tú eres mi dulce, eres mi bien.
Francisco, gracias. Mauricio,
Como panal de abeja que da
La
miel.
Betty,
¿cómo
Dulcito el
están?
polvo, nada me
¿Cómo estás, China? Qué gusto verte.
oh, igualmente, qué lindo verte por aquí.
Igual.
Hola, Olguis.
A todos.
Hola, Maribel.
Hola, Betica. Mr. Dunham, wait, welcome.
queda bien. Dulcito el
Bien.
polvo.
Bueno, pues bienvenidos a todos. Em, Qué rico tenerlos por aquí. Em, Vamos a dar un minutico o dos para que lleguen más personas. Eh, Quiero contarles que la videoconferencia va a estar grabada, va a estar, perdón, traducida automáticamente. Entonces, en la parte de abajo de su menú, para aquellos que necesiten traducción, primero que todo les presento a Bea. Beita, saluda. Eh, Bea nos va a ayudar con la traducción. Entonces, en la parte de abajo del menú van a encontrar un botón que se llama interpretación. Al lado del botón de reacciones o de reactions, y ahí van a poder escoger el idioma que quieren. Van a poder estar en inglés o en español y ahí van a poder escuchar la conferencia en el idioma que ustedes prefieran. Bueno, vamos a también, Bob normalmente los va a invitar a que conversemos, a que le hagan preguntas, a que estemos en una conversación y no en una conferencia muy formal. Entonces, los vamos a invitar también a que ustedes le pregunten, le hagan preguntas y desde ahí, entonces van a poder también hablar en inglés o en español porque Bea va a poder ayudarlos a traducir. Entonces, va a poder ayudarlos a hacer su voz. Nuevamente, el que pueda, el que quiera, prenda su cámara. Estamos listos para tener nuestra conversación el día de hoy. Veo gente de todos nuestros espacios de comunidad. Veo estudiantes, veo nuestros coaches, veo personas que han estudiado con nosotros en otros momentos, veo algunos que están estudiando con nosotros en este momento y veo caras nuevas y me encanta tenerlos a todos porque eso es lo que estamos tratando de hacer. Estamos tratando de generar una nueva comunidad de líderes generativos que estén con nosotros. Sé que algunos de ustedes son líderes y vienen acá por la parte de cómo liderar en la incertidumbre. Sé que algunos de ustedes son coaches y vienen por la parte de cómo hacer coaching en momentos de incertidumbre. Así que cada uno de ustedes va a poder escuchar la conversación desde el enfoque en el que quieren estar. Y lo que les cuento y seguramente Bob les contará es que para que podamos vivir en la incertidumbre o poder estar en la incertidumbre, necesitamos todos ser líderes, todos tener la posibilidad de ser coaches y todos tener la posibilidad de servir unos a otros en estas conversaciones que nos permitirán a todos entrar en un espacio diferente eh, y poder empezar a generar el futuro que queremos generar. Mi nombre, para los que no me conocen, es Maribel González. Soy la CEO del Instituto de Liderazgo Generativo en Latinoamérica y soy compañera, amiga, seguidora, estudiante y admiradora de Bob. Bob es nuestra fuente de información, el ojo de agua, como le digo yo. Es de quien nos trae las preguntas, quien nos trae la sabiduría, quien nos guía en el camino del liderazgo y quien adicionalmente nos permite entrar en este espacio de ser humanos, liderando y creando el futuro que queremos crear. En este último año y sobre todo en en estos últimos meses, muchas personas hablan de que estamos en un momento de incertidumbre, de que estamos en dificultades, muchos estamos contraídos. Y por eso queremos hablar de eso. ¿Qué es realmente estar en la incertidumbre? ¿Qué es realmente em, vivir desde allí? Y cómo podemos desde ahí seguir creando y seguir construyendo el futuro que nos importa cuidar nosotros mismos y con otros. Bob es, como les contaba, nuestra fuente, nuestra mística, pero adicionalmente, para que lo conozcan un poquito, es ingeniero de sistemas de la Universidad de Stanford. Trabajó durante mucho tiempo como ejecutivo en diferentes organizaciones del Silicon Valley, en organizaciones tecnológicas. También trabajó como consultor eh, en organizaciones, construyendo culturas, construyendo liderazgo. Y hace más de 40 años es el fundador y el líder de lo que nosotros llamamos el Instituto de Liderazgo Generativo, IGL, global, eh, y lidera a Latinoamérica, a nosotros, a todos nosotros, los que estamos aquí. Lidera allí el Estados Unidos y allí el Asia, próximamente Europa y Oceanía, ya en construcción. Entonces, quiero que me acompañen a dar la bienvenida a Bob. Bob, estamos súper felices de que estés aquí con nosotros. Como siempre, te tenemos a diario. Es seguramente la primera vez que algunos de ellos te tienen y para mí es una fascinación poder darte el micrófono para que empecemos a conversar sobre qué es liderar y hacer coaching en momentos de incertidumbre. Bob.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Give me a wave. I want to make sure. Now, I want to point out something around uncertainty and change and challenge, that a tendency we can have is to contract. And right now we have 59 people and only 17 of you have your camera on. No, you just put some more. So now we're up to 20. So I'm going to ask everyone to turn on your camera, because I want this to be a conversation, not a demonstration or a presentation, or I want you to deal with me. This is what we need to do in life with our uncertainty. We need to face our uncertainty, but if you can't even face me, how are you going to face uncertainty? And what is this conversation about? It's about you. It's about your life, your choices. And I want you to notice that out of the first 60 people, 40 of them had their camera off. And so this is kind of a symptom of the mood of our world today. I am contracted. I want to avoid it. Everything is too much. And so I really appreciate those of you who are turning on your camera so that we can see each other, so that we can engage in real life, real conversation, not a presentation about concepts. My invitation is that you engage with me, because you're going to have a chance to ask questions and share, that you engage with me in a way that your life is going to be different in 90 minutes. I promise it's possible, but it's up to you. Because this conversation is going to be about you. And that's the first place I want us to pay attention. When we use a word like uncertainty, it sounds like the world is uncertain. I don't know what the world is going to do. I want to propose to you, the world is not uncertain about anything. The world is always doing what the world does. It has no uncertainty. So where is the uncertainty? The uncertainty is in people. The uncertainty is in you. And that's the only place that it will be resolved. So we are going to explore this question that Maribel asked us. What is uncertainty? Where does it live? What do we do with it? How do we lead? And so when we enter this mood, this feeling of uncertainty, one way we can feel is, if you only give me the world I want, I will be a good leader. Don't give me the real world. Give me the world that's easy. Give me the world without change. Give me the world without breakdowns. Give me the world without challenges. But I'm going to propose to you that the kind of leadership that we need is when the world shows up with the word uncertainty, that we're ready for it. That this is the place where we do our work. If the world was certain and all we had to do was be good performers and go to work every day, we wouldn't need leaders. Uncertainty is why we need leadership. And so we want to get familiar with where it comes from inside of us. How are we doing? Are you with me? And so this is our exploration. There is a question in life that we have that is always with us because we're alive. It is our birthright. Every moment, life is coming to you and is asking you a question. What are you going to do now with me? What are you going to do now with me? What are you going to do now with me? And life shows up as change, situations, people, breakdowns, breakthroughs, joy, sadness, all of it. And yet so many of the stories of leadership and learning leadership is, if you can pack the situation into my model, I will have the answer. And then what life does is say, no, I'm not going to fit inside your model. You're going to have to deal with me. And what shows up when that happens? You get triggered. As a human being, we're built to be triggered. Oh my God, something's happening that I'm unfamiliar with. Something's happening that I don't know what to do. And I promise you, life will give you that. And what's very interesting about leadership is that when you grow in your leadership, when you grow in your impact in the world through leading or coaching, you get more of it, not less. Some people have the fantasy that if I become the leader and I'm in charge, I can finally be in control and it'll be easier. And no, when you are the leader, you get all the problems, all the breakdowns. So we need to know what leadership is and why we want it. Why are we interested in leadership? So I'm going to give you some secrets of the universe today. That is, if you play nice with me. You need to stay connected. You need to stay in the conversation. The first secret of the universe is the way to take control in your world is to take a deep breath. Do it right now. Take a deep breath. And actually feel your body. Actually feel the moment. Actually feel, I just took a breath and I have choice. In fact, when I asked you to take a deep breath, some of you did and some of you didn't. I gave you a choice. And that's your power. In every moment, you have a choice. But we haven't been taught that when we were kids. In fact, most of education was telling us you don't have a choice. You need to do what I tell you. But leadership is connecting to that capacity we have as human beings, that every moment is a choice, but we live in stories that is not. Well, I can't do that because my boss is a jerk. Well, I can't accomplish that because my team is not cooperating. Well, I can't succeed in life because, there's COVID and the business is down. Story, story, story. The issue is not the world. The issue is our story. And so take a deep breath. This time, really do it. Because I want you to connect to your capacity for choice. That's always there, no matter what the world does, no matter what your boss does, no matter what the market does, no matter how you feel, you have a choice. And we haven't been taught that in our culture. We need to reclaim this awareness. It is our birthright. You are 50% of every experience that you have. You are 50% of every moment. The world does what it does, other people do what they do, and you have a choice. But we live in stories that we don't have choice. And that story produces a certain soundtrack, a certain music. And the lyrics of that song are, I can't. I am so small. The situation is so big. And that is our challenge. And so we use this terminology about generative leadership. The reason we use the terminology generative is because leaders generate. But leaders don't generate because they're leaders. They generate because they're human beings. Human beings generate. They generate their world. They generate their future. They generate their actions. They generate their value, satisfaction, meaning, and emotions. And yet, our culture has taught us that you don't. Our culture has taught us that you are the victim of life, the victim of the world, the victim of the situation, the victim of other people. And it's time to wake up. It's time to take responsibility. I can choose in every moment what I pay attention to. I can choose in every moment what I'm committed to. I can choose, and this is new for most people, I can actually choose how my body reacts. For many people, this is new. I can choose what my body reaction is. Yeah, take a deep breath and straighten your spine and open your chest. Put your arms up and say, I can be big. I can do things. I just made a choice about my body. And if I had just been getting a little bit down and sad, I can change my body and it changes how I feel. So obvious when we see it. And yet we walk around the planet like we don't have a choice about how our body reacts. Yes, you do. And by the way, your body reacts the way you trained it. Bodies learn through practice. You have become what you have practiced. Now, no one told you what to practice, so you turned out the way you turned out. It's time to now learn how to practice. Learn how to guide my body rather than have my body be in control. The same thing is true with emotions. And why am I talking about body and emotions as part of leadership? Because your leadership and your impact on others arises from these fundamental places of life: body, emotions, and the story we live in. How are we doing? You with me so far? This is not only your life, this is not only your body to learn how to make choices with. You get to learn how to create a shared space with others. You get to learn how to create the story of your world. You get to learn how to create the story of the future. And stories are not powerless. The future is a story. Commitment does live in your body with a story. Value, satisfaction, and meaning only live in stories that are aligned with a certain reaction. And leaders want to produce value, satisfaction, and meaning. So in this first part of our conversation, we're going to get to uncertainty. I am creating a new context with you that our work over the last 4 decades has been that it has been a blind spot in our culture. That people live like, I don't have control of my body. I don't have control of my fear. I don't have control of my stories. I don't have control of my emotions. And I agree that you don't have control, but you do have choice. We don't control these things, but we choose. How do we choose? We choose by learning. One of the myths that we need to explode in our culture today is that you go to school, you learn, and then you get your degree, and then you go live life and you don't learn anymore. It's utterly crazy. And then we spend our life really working very hard not to learn and to keep everything the way it was. Rather than to unleash ourselves as a process of unfolding and becoming, which is what your body always wants to do. But we begin to say, no, this is me. I need to stay in this little compartment. That's me. No, this is the world. I need to only see the world in my little story of what the world is. No, this is and then we live in very small, and we don't learn. We don't get big. And so we need to learn to get big enough to have choices, to learn with our body, to learn with our emotions, to learn with our stories, because it is the foundation of everything we do. It is the foundation of how we connect with others. And is therefore the foundation of the impact we have in the results that are produced with others around me. It is the foundation of leadership. You with me so far? And so we have some myths that we have to explode. One is that you're not a leader. Oh, I need to go and take a course to be a leader. I need to learn what leadership is. I have news for you. You are already a leader. You just didn't know it. You don't need a title. You don't need a degree. You do need an awakening. Because when we ask questions in our generative tradition, we have learned that we have to ask the question, what is something, before we talk about how to do it. If you try to answer the question, how do I do leadership, and you don't know what it is, it's going to get pretty crazy. So what is leadership? Leadership is creating the future with others, is creating shared care and commitment about that future so that action is coordinated to make the future happen or not. My colleagues and I have spent 4 decades studying leadership at its roots. And what I just told you is inescapable. It's not a technique, it's not approach, It is what leadership is. If you don't produce shared care, then people don't care. Are you going to have a great organization or a great company or a great team if you don't care about the same things? No, you will not. You need to create shared commitment because commitment shapes what you do. If we don't have the same commitments, everybody's busy doing, and we don't fulfill the important commitments. And how do we do this? We do this in conversation. We need to rehabilitate conversation because people think conversation is just talking. It's a waste of time. Let's get busy. Let's do something. Let's stop talking. No, conversation is where you decide what to do. Who's going to do it? To what standard? These are generative conversations, and they call forth our commitment. If you don't have commitment, you will not have actions and results, or you will have very degraded action and results. Does that make sense? So we're creating the future. We need a shared story of we're here and we're going there. Are we going together or not? When we go together, we can call that being a team. We can call that being an organization. We can call that being a community. We can also call that being a family and being in relationship. And so I'm saying something very important, that leadership and developing leadership, the leadership journey is the life journey of a human being. And so many of the techniques and approaches in the world don't include that. That leadership is some kind of technical stuff with a model and doing stuff like a technician. No, it's life. And we're looking to touch the inner core of ourself and other people to bring forth our best, our power, our care and a commitment to share it, to create a shared intention for the future and make it happen through action. That is leadership. But to do that, and I am going to get to uncertainty, to do that, we need to understand that results in the world from human beings are always created together. They're always created in what we call the we space. And in the we space, that's where the power word is shared. Shared future, shared care, shared commitment, shared intention, shared standards, shared practices. And the leader's job is to produce those shared things, not to be the expert, not to be giving orders, not to be the one who knows, but to create the shared space with others. But in order to be effective in the shared space, you have to deal with yourself first. You have to deal with, are you able to have the interactions, to have the presence, to have the connection, to engage others to produce these shared spaces, this coordination of action, and producing a new and valuable future? Can you do that? Because when you go to that space, you have to face yourself. Where do you contract? Where are you afraid? One of the very simple skills that we have learned that people need to learn for coordinating action is to say yes, but you also have to say no. And it's amazing how many people can say no. And when you have a life, a person, a team, or a culture in which you cannot say no, you have disaster. You have overcommitment, and no promises mean anything because we can't do it all. But we're very nice to each other. Very simple example. Do you have the body and the power to not only say yes, but to say no? And for many people, this is an edge. So when we do leadership development for leaders or coaches, coaching leaders, learning means you go to your edge. What is the edge? The edge is the place where you go from what you know to what you don't know. The edge is where you go from the familiar to the unfamiliar. It's where you go from confidence to uncertainty. And for most people, the experience of the edge is contraction and fear. For many people, it's avoidance, because before the edge, I'm in my comfort zone. I'm where I am competent and I know what I'm doing, and I certainly want to stay there. And if we have big breakdowns, big challenges in which what I'm doing is not enough, I need to go beyond the edge, but I am afraid. I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid of showing up in front of other people, telling them I don't know. And so part of this path of learning leadership is to create a new relationship with the edge, from a barrier, from a place that we want to avoid, to all the possibilities you care about beyond what you already know are over the edge. And in order for us to learn to go beyond the edge, to grow ourselves, we need to make a new relationship with fear. Fear needs to become our friend, our advisor. We want our fear to be our advisor, not our decider. But for that, we need to know, where do we make decisions from? And so let's go to the question, what is uncertainty? But first, let's take a deep breath. I brought you a long way already in this story. So just feel your feet, feel your weight on your ass if you're sitting. It's good to be in your body. It's good to feel our breath. It's good to begin to experience our presence in the moment, to begin to feel our capacity to choose no matter what. So uncertainty. Uncertainty is a mood, and it comes from the opinion, the assessment that I don't know what to do. I'm not sure what is going to happen. And we make this a bad thing, as though facing the world where you're not sure what's going to happen is a bad thing. First of all, I want to point out that it's very familiar. You live with uncertainty all the time. What are you going to have for dinner tomorrow night? Well, I don't know. I'm uncertain. But it's not a problem, because that uncertainty lives within my familiarity with it. I know that I can handle that choice. I know I can handle that. And so when uncertainty is a mood that bothers us, it's only when there is a possible choice and you're not sure what the menu is. And what do we want? We want the situation to fit into our past, to fit into our comfort zone, to fit into what we want to, what we already know. And it doesn't. And then we have a feeling and we call it uncertainty. But the issue is not the situation. The issue is our relationship with our desire to keep everything inside of our past. We cannot grow as individuals, we cannot grow our teams, we cannot grow the future for our communities if we cannot imagine creating beyond our past. And so I'm going to come back to our principle of being generative. We need to learn to be generative in the face of uncertainty. We need to learn to have a body that if there is an uncertain future, we still have choice. That if I don't know what to do or how to do it, we will figure it out. One of the discoveries we had in our generative journey over decades has been where people say, I'm in a new situation and I don't know what to do. The reason they say that is the new situation doesn't fit inside their past experience. But when we begin to see, oh, I'm in a new situation, what can I count on? What can I be certain of? Well, let's see. I'm still breathing. Are you still breathing? Everybody still breathing? Okay, we've got some certainty here. I still have possibilities. Can we look for possibilities even when we are in a new situation? Yeah, I know I can do that. What can I do when I don't know? Well, let's see. I could learn. I could ask for help. I could experiment. I could do prototypes. I could zoom out and see the new territory. And then I could begin to invent new stories. I could reach out. I could build new networks. When people do this in everyday life, we admire them. We call them entrepreneurs. We call them inventors. We call them innovators, and we call them leaders. But we can all do this. And so we have so many challenges in the world today. COVID. Are they going to lock down tomorrow? Are my customers going to go away because of COVID? And yet I see many people succeeding. Restaurants, my favorite restaurant did not close down. It began to do a lot of takeout. I'm so happy. The restaurant changed their habit. I changed my habit. I'm still happy. Did I expect that? No. Was it new? Yes. And so the problem is not that we cannot invent a new way to take care of concerns and a new way to invent action when things change. The problem is we don't want to. We want to only go back to the old comfort zone. So for those of you who are leaders, if my message is making sense, we need to learn to zoom out and look at the possibility of inventing new games, not just trying to hang on to the old game. And if we were doing that, instead of reacting to a breakdown, if we were doing that without waiting for a breakdown, we would call that innovation. We would call that growing our possibilities. And if you're coaching leaders, the job of coaches is to help people see their world and their future with new eyes and build a body that can take new actions. And we go back to this foundation you already are generating. And if you're in the story, I can't deal with this situation, you're generating that. So we need to learn to generate a new story. I can always get bigger than the situation. Zoom out, learn, get help, invent. And without that framework, we will become the victim of life. And from that framework, we can lead. So how do we do this? I'm going to do a couple of moves here. We'll take some questions, and then I have a whole illumination of a path for how this looks in your life. And we're going to have you discuss this with some colleagues, and we'll chat about it. But the most important thing I'm saying to you is you are in a dance with life, and life can give you whatever move it wants to make, and you can cope, even if you don't know how. Because there's lots of moves that we make when we don't know how. So what does it feel like to face the unfamiliar? What does it feel like to learn? What does it feel like to go to the edge? I want you all to take your hands and clasp them like this. You can do this. Very good. This is something that feels very familiar. Now, move your hands so they are clasping the other way. For most people, this feels less comfortable. Is that right? The reason this feels less comfortable, it's less familiar. You have not practiced it. So now cross your arms. If you can, cross them the other way. This is when people really say, oh man, this is really uncomfortable. Why? I haven't practiced this. I'm going to go back to the way it was. I'm going to go back to my comfort zone. And yet, if what the world is saying to you, no, we're giving you a new challenge. You need to have something new. You need to have a body that can go to the new shape, the new configuration. So I want you to do this. I want you to do this. We're going to do this 3 times. I want you to cross your arms, go to the unfamiliar, go back to the familiar, go to the unfamiliar, back to the familiar, go to the unfamiliar. Now, for most people, I only had you do this 4 times. Most people would tell me it felt a little bit easier at the end. My body was learning in only 30 seconds. I was beginning to have a new choice, a new shape, a new possibility, and yet I lived my entire life like I only had one item on the menu. This is true in every domain. Yes, we have a comfort zone. Yes, we have familiarity, and we have infinite possibilities for expanding our possibilities, to expand our repertoire, and not just try to pack everything into the one I already have. And so you see, uncertainty is not an issue with the world, it's an issue with you trying to keep everything in your past. And we need to learn to breathe, to open our arms and embrace the world as it comes to us, even when it's unfamiliar. And then we begin to have conversations about what do we still care about? What are we going to commit to? And how do we create actions to make that future happen? That is how we learn to lead in uncertainty. So let me ask you to put into the chat comments or questions of where you are so far. I just want to check to see how is what we're speaking about landing for you, because I want you to be aware that I'm not just giving an interesting presentation. I hope I am inviting you to look with new eyes at the fundamental power for choice that is part of you that you didn't know you had. The fundamental power for learning, the fundamental power to take your reactions, your fears, your contraction as a place of learning, not a barrier. as only a step along the way to growing how to embrace all of that to find your choice. So you see, I've been starting with the part of our experience that has been left out in our cultural common sense. We think leadership is being in your head, being smart, having ideas, telling people what to do. Leadership starts in your body. Leadership starts in your confidence, in your presence, your confidence that I can still breathe and choose in the face of a challenge. That's the first lesson. Now we have skills. We have been involved in researching these issues and questions for generative leadership, embodied skill, for 40 years. And what we have found that learning leadership has some challenges, but the issue is not leadership. We know what leadership is. We know what the moves of leadership is. That's not the problem. The problem people have in leadership development is they don't know how to learn in the body. They don't know how to learn in their emotions. They don't know how to learn to do the moves. They want to understand the concepts, but leadership is a performance art. It's not a domain of concepts. It's a domain of actions. And leadership is a full body contact sport with other people. And when we see that, then we can begin to learn and move our edge forward to hold bigger promises. You already are skillful in this domain, or you wouldn't be here. You already have conversations, you already have ambitions, you already have some success in your life. But leadership is about expanding your capacity to hold the future, the connection with other people, and all the breakdowns that come with it. The bad moods, the fear, the distrust, the arrogance, the disconnection. And the big challenge we have in the world of organizations is the common sense of our culture has tended to make organizations machines. We want to make people in organizations machines. Here's your objective. You should be the vending machine for these numbers. It doesn't work very well. There is huge waste and suffering in organizations because of this framework in which the people involved are not bad people. They're just blind. They're just the products of our culture. We have a blindness in our culture of what is a human being and how do human beings create the future together. When we go there, we can begin to generate higher performance. The very first project I learned these principles with in my career was 40 years ago in Silicon Valley in the US. I was working with an organization, a technology organization, that was in a death spiral. And I said, this is crazy. The mood of the organization was resignation. People were quitting. And I said, why aren't we working with excellence? And then they gave me the challenge of being a program manager of 250 software engineers. And I'd never done that before. And luckily, I was introduced at that time to the power of conversation, generative conversation. And even as a beginner, I began to have conversations to get clear with other people. What is our shared commitment? What are you going to do? What do you count on me to do? Let's make promises together. And if we have breakdowns, we will help each other. As simple as that sounds, that I was totally missing in the organization, because when I said make a promise together, we need to make promises we can trust. And the culture of my company was we say yes to everything. That was the problem. We said yes to everything and produced nothing. And by changing the conversations, the organization went from being constipated, not being able to get a product out the door for 2.5 years. And we got all 35 products of the company organized, improved, and out the door in 6 months at 10 times higher quality than had ever been achieved before. That's why I'm here. That was my first experience of seeing the power of generative conversation. But I had to do everything that we have talked about today. I had to face my own fear. I had to have the honest conversation. I had to say yes and no and allow people to say yes and no to me. And in a couple of months, we had promises that everybody could own that we shared together. And we have been continuing our development, research, and work in the world ever since. We've worked in dozens and dozens of companies. We've trained thousands and thousands of professionals, coaches, and leaders. But it's not about learning new concepts. It's about building the embodiment of new awareness, new connection, and producing shared commitment and coordination through all the breakdowns that happen in organizational life. So I'm going to give you a summary here of what I've been introducing, and I'm going to give you a steps of the path, and then we're going to have you have a chat, and we'll look at your questions. Number one, the uncertainty is not out there, it is in you. You see, if you zoom out and look at life and history, everything is certain that things will change, that there will be breakdowns, that there will be death, that there will be disaster is guaranteed. But we live in small, local periods of time where we have a period of time where we don't see that. And so when it shows up, we say, oh, this is terrible. Part of leadership is to reflect from the bigger space and say, what am I going to do if the market for my company disappears tomorrow? What am I going to do if I'm told I have a terminal illness tomorrow? I have these reflections. It doesn't mean if it happens, it'll have less of an impact, but it also means that I'm ready to be generative, because the question I reflect on is, what am I going to do? I'm learning to engage with life rather than avoid life. Leaders need to be in these conversations. Coaches, you need to be in these questions with people. Don't just deal with the breakdowns that are in front of you. Don't just deal with the possibilities that you're already working with. Play bigger. Be able to move in a bigger space of life. Face your edge. We all have edges. And when I talk about the edge as a learning edge, going from knowing to not knowing, I'm not saying it's a problem that you solve by learning. All you do is move the edge. You're going to have the edge forever. Remember that the bigger possibilities you want are over the edge of what you already know. One moment. And so we need to have a relationship with the edge. And I've been moving my edge for 40 years. My hunger for learning is bigger than it has ever been before. I have bigger questions, bigger ambitions. And so we don't want to solve the problem of the edge and get bigger and then stop. There's no limit. And why would you want to do that? Because you care. Because things matter to you. You have a choice in life. Do you want to grow for the rest of your life, or you want to stop and only have the future look like the past? It's your choice. Many people choose the latter. I only want to be in the familiar. It's a choice. This is part of what we face as leaders, not only our own choice, but the choice of other people. So when we see that, here's some steps. And then I'm going to have you have a conversation with some colleagues. The first step of dealing with uncertainty, change, possibility, not only when the world triggers you, but simply when you wake up and say, what am I going to do with my life? What am I going to do with my power to create, to my power to generate? The first step is take a deep breath. Take a deep breath right now. Take a deep breath. Feel your aliveness. And learn to center. Learn to put yourself in the physical, emotional, and story space of choice. And when you do that, you may find sometimes like, I don't know what to choose. Accept that as a gift. One of the biggest breakdowns that people face in life is you have choice and we run away from it. Sit with it. You don't need to have an answer. But honor that as a human being, your life is your choice. It is the unfolding of your choices. Even if we have the story that is not, because we just choose that story. Second, reconnect. I do have choice and I am 50% of every moment. No matter what the world does, I have choice. Maybe the breakdown is unfamiliar. Maybe it's huge. Maybe I don't know what to do. And I can still go forward. I can still learn, ask for help, speculate, explore, experiment. Going to the edge, facing the breakdown, and not knowing are the beginning of leadership action, not the barrier. Then we need to learn the world of conversation. The future lives in conversation. Action is created always in conversation first. How we evaluate our results and navigate to better results is a conversation. We need to wake up because this is a cultural blind spot where we have degraded conversations to talking. No, conversations are creating. And we need to learn that power that we share together. And when we find our care, find our commitment, when we create shared care, shared commitment, and learn the skills of making trustworthy promises, making projects together, doing committed planning together, managing breakdowns together, managing moods, the good ones and the bad ones, being bigger than the breakdown. These are the skills of leadership. The content is technical. You may be an expert at accounting, for example. That doesn't mean you're an expert at leadership. Leadership is the context of action of human beings creating the future. And then finally, when you learn to learn at your edge, when you begin to be hungry for possibilities, when you're willing to face your fear and go beyond it. You see, fear is not bad. It's only a problem if you let it make your decisions for you. One of my teachers taught me, fear is simply your body telling you you are not organized for this situation yet. Then fear is simply calling you to learn. And we want to learn to move from our commitment, not our fear. These are the lessons of leadership that we have learned over 40 years. And so what we call generative leadership and generative learning is to realize there is a structure to action. There is a structure to the leadership development journey. There is a structure that is underneath our life journey and our learning journey. And the invitation of generative leadership and the work we do is to accompany you on those journeys. But the journey is your life. It's about you. We don't dictate any content of your journey. We just make you more powerful in it. What do you want to create with your life? What do you want to create in the world? And we are all involved in this discipline because it empowers us to continually grow to make that happen, individually and together. So I'd like to invite everyone to a breakout session, groups of 3, and to have a chat about what this conversation I've introduced to you is landing for you. What questions does it produce? What concern does it provoke? What new possibility does it open for you? And then we'll come back and we'll have a chat together. Maribel? We have survivors.
Sí.
We have
still have
survivals of this incredible, challenging leadership edge of talking to other people.
the rest is coming back.
Oh my goodness. Look at that.
You can see the numbers like.
Oh my gosh. It's like being at the
Olguita, nos
casino.
agendamos. No sé dónde está Olguita, pero nos agendamos. Me quedé con la conversación.
So let's have a conversation. What's showing up for you? Questions, insights,
So,
concerns. What does
Bob,
it provoke for you? Yeah.
Bob, we have 4 questions in the chat. So I want to ask you some of them.
Okay.
No, I particularly find amazing David Gonzalez question, and he's saying, how about maintaining the momentum? Usually I get energized and get along with fear. I get to be a leader, but that energy doesn't last forever. How can I maintain the energy? Please, a little help here.
Beautiful.
Good question.
Great question. One way that we learn when we are younger in life is when we are challenged, we do more. We expend a lot of energy. And if you look at people who run races in the Olympics, the people who spurt out ahead too fast, they lose. They disappear at the end. And so there needs to be a place of maintaining pace. There's a couple of ways that we can learn to do this. One way to maintain pace is to manage your promises so you're not committing to do more than you can do. Because sometimes in our excitement, ambition, we overcommit, and then we say, oh, I don't need to sleep. I don't need to see my family. I'll just work, work, work. And then we burn out. The other is to cultivate the source of your energy. Where does the energy feed you from? And I propose to you, it feeds you from your care. It feeds you from your relationship with why are you doing what you're doing, not just the doing. And then we need to learn to cultivate good habits with the body. We need to learn to say no as well as yes. We need to learn to negotiate, because when we're young, we think we need to do more than we can do. And that's not the path to success. The path to success is to invent valuable promises and make them happen. And that is different than overworking. It's a different skill. And so we need to learn another lesson on the road to leadership and the good life. We need to learn rest and renewal. We are not made to be drinking Red Bull all the time. And so just think, when you breathe in and you breathe out. Your heart contracts and it must rest. This is the pattern, rhythm. We are creatures of rhythm. we need to find good rhythm. And if you are subject in a culture that is always asking you to overcommit, you need to zoom out and say, is this a healthy culture? Because I see many people who have burned out in their work career and got divorced, lost their health, and wind up having a problem with substances. So this is an important leadership skill. What is the powerful rhythm? And remember that your impact in the world, the value you create, is not based on how much you do. It is based on the value of the promise, which comes from the design of powerful conversations, not working hard. Hopefully that's a helpful answer.
Awesome, Bob. And let me complement that answer that you are doing with another question that another David is doing, and is, how can we lead people with different feelings and emotions, and how we can do fear an opportunity of learning?
So how do we lead with people with different emotions? That is always the case. That is not the problem case. That is always the case. So this has to do with creating the context of relationship. This has to do with you are you and I am me, and we're different. We have different perspectives. We have different histories. We have different skills. We have different emotional palettes. That's not a problem. That diversity is actually an asset, because you want a team where people are different with different points of view and skills. This is where the generative work happens. It's not about different emotions, it's about creating shared commitment and shared care. And then also creating a context in which we learn to learn together how we manage our emotions on behalf of our commitment. That we don't surrender to fear. That we go beyond the fear. That we learn how to create shared moods and emotions of respect, of trust, of commitment, of confidence. And when we have emotional triggers in people, we don't make that bad or a problem. We give people space to be human beings. And we let an emotional moment be something we respect, we commit to, and we see what is the concern or care that needs to be taken care of. And this is all in the context, not of dealing with problems, but of learning together. Remember, one of the big learnings that we have learned in the generative path is that emotions are a place we can develop skill. We're not victims of emotion. And so that's the emotional part. What was the second part of the question, Maribel?
I think you already answered it. It was about the fear and how to make the fear an opportunity of learning. But let me ask you this another question, and then we go with Paola Gallardo. Marisabel is asking you, and for me, it's important, this question in the middle of the COVID and our new practices, is what do you think about the virtual leadership? How is leadership through the computers and through Zoom and all this new life that we have in the online world trying to connect with humans?
Good question. And what we have learned, you see, the work that we have done in generative leadership for over 20 years, we had mostly live event we had personal coaching and we had phone calls, but we did our conferences live. Very powerful because we need to do deep work with our body, our presence, our awareness. And so when COVID hit last March, we said, oh my God, are we going to be out of business? We're going to have to try to do a conference virtually like we're doing here. And we found that we can actually produce the experience according to our students that has, in most respects, it's just as powerful as being live, and sometimes even more. So for example, you can pin me, you can pin my picture and be close to me as I'm speaking to you in a way that you could not do if we were in a conference room. When you're talking to me, I can pin you and we're even more intimate in the conversation. Because it's not about the medium, it's about the conversation. So hopefully that you've had the experience in the conversation today that you can feel connected to me. Do you feel me? Are we here together? Yes, we can do this. We can overcome the story of I'm on a computer because we go for looking for the connection, feeling it, by allowing the power of honest conversation, honest feeling, honest openness of the body. The computer does not limit that. So we have found that we have had some advantages in our conferences. We've begun to have our conferences. We used to do 3 days or 4 days in a row because people had to travel, right? We need to do it all while we're together. Now we'll take a 4-day conference and do 2 days one week and 2 days another week. And it's turned out to be much better because you can digest what you're learning, you can practice in between. So we have found the virtual world has its challenges, but it also brings some gifts for our learning. And the only barrier is your own tendency to withdraw. You need to commit yourself to not let the computer be your barrier. And then we can learn deeply together, has been our experience.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob. We have our list, 7 minutes. I know that we commit with you for 1 hour and a half. I know that Bob wants to answer Paola Gallardo's question, and for sure and others. We are going to keep recording the video. So if you need to go at 7:30, you can go. But anyway, you are going to receive our recording, and it also going to be in our YouTube channel. I'm going to put the address of the YouTube channel in the chat, so you can see other contents that we also have. Paola, can you open your mic so you can ask your question? You can do it in English or in Spanish.
En español.
Perfecto. Beatriz te puede traducir.
Buenísimo. Hola, ¿cómo están? ¿Me escuchan bien, no es cierto? Estoy en el celular, no estoy en el Mac, entonces no veo a nadie, pero si me escuchan, buenísimo. Mira, yo primero me siento súper honrada de escuchar a Bob. Estoy maravillada, primero que todo. Estoy feliz de este momento, es un regalo para mí. Y lo que quiero preguntarle a él es lo siguiente. Soy coach ontológico y consultor senior. Y la semana pasada estoy haciendo en una empresa multinacional un taller de empoderamiento colaborativo. Y me tocó trabajar con los líderes. Y en las dinámicas que hacemos, que son experienciales, hubo uno que el segundo día se pone a llorar porque dice, me doy cuenta que mi forma de liderar no está conectando con mis colaboradores, no estoy siendo agradecido, no lo estoy mirando desde lo profundo, desde sus emociones, solo estoy dando órdenes. Y él se dio cuenta de esto y a mí me cayeron las lágrimas junto con él un poco, entonces hubo otro líder que dice, pero es raro que un consultor se emocione. Y yo me quedé pensando en eso y yo decía, pero si yo soy consultor y estoy hablando de conectarnos con el mundo emocional y que eso probablemente va a ayudar a enfrentar mejor el mundo que vivimos hoy, ¿cómo no emocionarme de alguien que se da cuenta que lleva liderando por años de una forma más dura? Que en 2 días se haya dado cuenta, por supuesto que me emocionó, pero quedé con esa duda de un consultor, ¿se puede emocionar o no? Porque desde mi perspectiva yo decía, yo estoy generando un contexto.
Sí.
Me parece que era para mí, o sea, yo me súper emocioné con lo que él se dio cuenta porque se abre una posibilidad enorme en sus colaboradores de cómo liderar, de cómo empezar a liderar. Esa es mi duda. No sé si quedó clara.
Yeah. Oh, yes. No, good question. Thank you. The principle about interaction with people and with conversations that is crucial is they need to be honest. As soon as we start posturing ourselves to only show up the way we want to be looked at, we will have disconnection. We will have distrust. So there's no problem with showing your emotions unless you have you are uncentered with the emotion. You are being taken by the emotion. You want to show that I can have emotions because I choose to have to be honest in the moment. I think in the situation that you were describing, Paula, the issue was not your crying. The issue was that your intimate connection with the leader, you may have lost connection with the rest of the group. And so in that situation, when you really connect with one person, you need to include the rest of the group with what is going on. And so sometimes in those moments, we gather the whole group to come around and appreciate what's happening or put a hand on. Or if you begin to express, you can still include the group with your conversation. That's my speculation of the reaction. And the other place is to know that when we have honest conversation and honest emotion, that the standard of our culture is that's not appropriate. And so some people need to have a learning moment about what is possible in an honest leadership public conversation. And so for me, the concern I would have as a advisor to you is not that you cried, but were you maintaining connection and center? Because people can tell the difference. Does that resonate for you?
Sí, claro.
Sí.
Sí, de todas maneras, muchas gracias.
Yeah, stay big. So cry, but stay big.
And
Cry with
connected.
the world. Cry with the group. Beautiful.
Gracias.
Bien.
Muchas gracias.
A ti, Paola, por tu pregunta. Ya tenemos el cierre de la hora. Yo particularmente quiero darles las gracias a todos por haber estado aquí, por acompañarnos, pero sobre todo quiero darles las gracias por estar atentos a escuchar diferente, a darse nuevas posibilidades, a encontrar posibilidades en las conversaciones que estamos teniendo y a las que estamos abriendo. Yo personalmente ya tengo su email, los seguiremos invitando, los seguiremos buscando para que continuemos en conversaciones. Como siempre hemos dicho con Bob, estamos construyendo un mundo nuevo, estamos construyendo países nuevos, estamos construyendo hombres nuevos y estamos regalando la mirada al liderazgo generativo como esta posibilidad de ver y de crear futuros que nos apasionan. Y sobre todo, como dice Bob, y nos encanta porque es nuestro care, es dando la posibilidad de crear un mundo donde todos podamos progresar. Bob, como siempre, muchas gracias por tu sabiduría, por tu cariño, por tu apertura y por seguirnos iluminando con, con tanta sabiduría. A todos ustedes, muchas gracias, feliz noche y nos vemos en nuestra próxima invitación. Yeah, awesome. Muchas gracias a todos. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Have a good night. I am super satisfied with our conversation, with the presence of everybody. A mis coaches, muchas gracias por haber estado aquí. Por aquí veo Michelle, tan bonita que viniste. Ay,
Sí.
se fue
Ahora le
justo
digo,
cuando la
ahora le
estaba
digo.
saludando. Bueno,
Ahora le digo, ahora le digo.
Thank you,
un
Bob.
beso a todos.